So now that we know what Kismet is, let's get into some examples of how to use it in game situations. And the best way I find of learning Kismet is to get a basic door open function. A lot of people will use similar kind of things in their levels, whether it be a door or some kind of other object that opens and closes. And it's just a pretty straightforward setup in terms of Kismet. So first we need to find a door to use. In my content browser, I'll just go to UDK game, make sure I have static meshes selected, and I'll just type in door in the search bar. And I'm going to use SLT doors SM door 04 and just drag that into my scene here. Now we need a door to fill the doorway, and the door should be just underneath, called doorway 04. So we'll just drag that into our scene as well, and I'll close my content browser and move this into place here. Right, so as we know, anything green in the perspective viewports of UDK is a static mesh, but static kind of implies that it doesn't move, it is static. So we need a way to make these move in our game in order to make some gameplay. So with the door selected, what we'll do is we'll right click on the door, go to convert, and convert static mesh actor to a mover. And what that does is, if we click it, it'll change our actor from green to this pink colour in our perspective viewports. And anything pink means it is an interpactor, aka a mover, and then we can move it in our scene. A couple of things you will want to change in the properties when we convert something to a mover is if you press F4, we can see here at the top it says interpactor 0, and that implies it is a mover. But automatically by default, whenever you convert something to a mover inside of Unreal, the collision will change so that it has no collision. So if it's a door that we don't want to be able to walk through, we just want to change that to block all, and that should set up any properties that you have. Next we need a way to interact this with our scene. We need to have an event that says, when we do something, the door will open. So you could use a trigger, like in the previous example of setting up the camera, or we can use a trigger volume, which I find much easier for with doors because we can get exact measurements and dimensions and stuff like that. So if I just click on my door and click the builder brush, we'll just move this builder brush into position here, just so it encompasses the door. We can go into geometry mode and just move our verts around the door so that it gets into position okay. You may want to move it out a little bit to the sides, but that should just about do it for the trigger volume. So we can see it encompassing the door. If you just want to tweak a few properties, you can. And so we've got our red builder brush surrounding the door. And if we go to our volumes tab here, right click, and we can either choose a dynamic trigger volume or we can just use a normal trigger volume. For now I use a trigger volume, and just click on that, and if we move our red builder brush out of the way, we see this green volume surrounding our door. And now we can use this green volume as our event inside of Kismet to tell the door to open. So we'll just get rid of geometry tools for now. So with our trigger volume selected, we'll open up Kismet again and right click, new event using trigger volume 0. Previously it was a new event using trigger, well this one's a trigger volume, and we'll just do it as another touch event like last time. So with a touch event there, now we need some kind of action to open the door, and in this case we'll use something called Matinee. So with our door selected, we'll right click here and a new Matinee. And basically Matinee is a really powerful tool, as we see when we open it, just by double clicking on the Matinee box. We see an empty screen here where we can add groups for different things. We can have empty groups, or we can have camera groups, skeletal mesh groups, lighting groups, and all these groups kind of control properties within the world. So the best example I can think of is in Gears of War, for example. If there's a horde invasion with ships flying overhead, things blowing up, skeletal meshes moving with animations and different things like that, all this will be done inside of Matinee. So it's a really powerful tool. For now we'll just use it for opening and closing the door, just so you can get to grips with the basics. So with our door selected, we will right click in this dark grey empty space and we'll just go to add new empty group and just click, and we'll call this group door, but you can call it anything you like really, it doesn't matter. And we'll just make this box a little bigger so you can see. So if you've done this properly, if we select off our group, the group will be green and our door won't be selected. If we click this door again, it'll select our door in the level. So if this isn't happening, then make sure you delete the group, select your door again and just create a new empty group. You should have that kind of relationship between the two. Right, for this example we need to make the door move up and down, so we will right click on this group and go to new movement track. We have lots of different tracks here that can do many different things, like I said previously, by controlling light scales, animations, and you can toggle things off, have events running off Matinee. For now though, we'll just go to add new movement track and just left click it, and now we have a movement thing, bar here. If we go to this middle section now, this is our time frame. If we go to this bottom section and just left mouse click wherever, this timeline will scroll left and right to show where we are in time. The default time frame for Matinee is 5 seconds. If you would like your door to open over 5 seconds, then you can leave that there. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this red toggle here, left click on it and just drag it down to about 2 seconds. Okay, if you want this to snap to exactly 2 seconds, we can use this toggle snap icon up here, and you can set the time to 1 second, 0.5 seconds. For this example, 0.5 would be pretty handy. So we'll left click again and snap it to 2. If you would like to make a track longer, we can just use the mouse scroll wheel and zoom out a bit and just use this bar along the bottom to scroll left and right, and you can get as many seconds as you would like your track to last. So I'll just use my scroll wheel to scroll back in, just so we can bring it back into view. And again, left clicking on this bottom section and scrolling right to the end. With the movement track selected, I'm just going to press enter on the keyboard, and this adds a new key. Alternatively, I'll just delete this. You can go to add key here and that'll do the same thing. But the shortcut for add key is enter on the keyboard. So with this key selected, you'll see it highlighted there. It'll say in your screen adjust key movement 1. Okay, and this means that we can move our door to wherever we want to go. So I'll just move the camera into position. With this key selected, I'm just going to get this arrow and move it upwards, just so it's above the door. Okay, and I'm going to click off it. You should see this yellow line appear with the dots going up the line. And if we click off this now, just so we're not editing the key, you don't want to be editing the key right now, just click off into empty space and just press stop, and then we'll go to play, and there we go. We have our door opening. So if we close down this Matinee, the next thing we need to do is, with our Kismet window open, we need to tell this volume when this touches this, we open the door. So from your touched output, we go to the play input, and what that's saying is, if we touch this green trigger volume, we want to open this door. Okay, so we'll just go in now and test it out and see if that works. Okay, so we're in our scene. We go forward, the door opens, and we can go through it. Okay, so that's a really basic example of getting the door to open. Next we'll go into a bit more of an intermediate setup of how to use use maybe a keyboard or a switch or something in your level to then open the door. So now we know how to open a door inside of Kismet. We'll move on to something a little bit more advanced, and this time we'll press a switch to open this door. Okay, so I'm just going to go into my content browser again and just find a suitable mesh in the content browser to use as a trigger pad. And I think there's one in here called HU Decor SM Storage Tanks 07. So I'll use this one and just drag it into my scene, or right click and add it in. It's not actually selected in my viewport, so I'll just go and find that again. And there we go. We'll just drag that in there. Okay, so we have this in our scene. It's the wrong way around, so we'll just rotate it. And we'll just move it into place a little bit better, just so it's at eye level. And I'll also make it a little bit bigger as well, so that the player can see it. Right, so another thing I'll do is just delete this trigger volume for now, and you can just press continue. It's just because it's referenced in Kismet. And so now what we'll do is we'll right click on this trigger and go to add actor, add trigger. Okay, and this will place the trigger just in front of our switch that we want to use. I'll just move it into the center, and that looks good there for now. Again, I'll change the properties. I won't change the collision height and radius just yet. What I'll do though is I'll uncheck hidden so that we can see it in the level, and I'll close that down. We'll jump into Kismet. I'll delete this trigger volume because that no longer exists. And what I'll do now is I'll right click and go to new event using trigger 1 with my trigger selected. New event using trigger 1, and this time we'll do a used switch instead of a touch event. So a used event there. So when we use this trigger, we will play this door. So when we press use on this trigger, this door will open. A couple of the properties you may want to change inside the trigger used with it selected. Aim to interact, I'll just turn that off, and that just means that if you see this little red crosshair in the trigger, you'd have to be aiming exactly at that little trigger in order to use it. So aim to interact, we'll turn that off and change interact distance to about 200, and that just means anywhere within 200 units we can click that and that should work okay. So we'll just test that out for now and see what happens. So we go up to this door, we press use, which is the E key by default, and then the door opens. And that's working pretty good now. Another thing we could do is have a switch in there. Some people want to open, close the door, depending on what it is going on in your level. So what I'll do is I'll just hold Control and Alt, left mouse drag, and just move this Matinee to the side a bit. I'll also click somewhere on this black line and hold down Alt and left click. That will break any links that are already connected. And what we'll do now is we'll add a new action by right clicking new action. We'll go to switch and then just choose a normal switch there. Okay, just moving this into position by holding down Control. We'll change a couple of properties here. In the properties tab, we'll go to sequence action switch and change the link count to 2, and we'll also turn looping on. Okay, we'll put the output of the used to in, we'll put link 1 going to play, and we'll put link 2 going to reverse. And what this means is that when we use this trigger, it'll fire off link 1, which is play, and that will open the door. And then if we use this trigger again, it'll fire link 2, which will close the door by reversing the animation. And since we got looping selected, we can click this as many times as we want, and it'll keep opening and closing the door. Okay, on your trigger properties here, all triggers by default are set to max trigger count 1, okay? And this just means you can use the trigger once before it won't work again. So I'll just change this value to 0 and press enter, and this means we can use this trigger as many times as we want without it breaking. One more thing that I like to add is if this switch was somewhere away from the door and you didn't want to run all the way to check if the door had opened just for debugging and stuff, I'll hold down the L key on my keyboard and left mouse click, and this will create a log. And if I put the output into there, the log doesn't actually do anything except just log information to the screen. So if I put door open and press enter, whenever I use this thing, it'll say door open. Alternative, what I could do actually while we're here is I'll just hold Alt and left click, break that link, and on link 1 I'll put the log into there, and then I'll select the log, Control C, Control V, and that copies and pastes the node, and I'll put link 2 going into there. Okay, and I'll put door closed on this one. So it'll say door open when it's open, door closed when it's closed. And we'll just check that out now. So door open, door closed, door open, and we could do this all day, but we know that works and we know it'll open and close on command. So that's a more advanced way of setting up your door, just with a little bit more control over what's actually going on in your scene. So we've got our door to open and close with a pretty cool setup where we can have it on an infinite loop. The next thing to do is I'm going to add a camera into this scene to show the door actually opening. And this is a good way for a designer to show what is actually happening in the level. Say this trigger over here was a 30-second walk from this door. When the player pulls this lever or presses this trigger, how do they know what has happened? And we can do that by doing camera cuts. So we'll just move this trigger a little bit to the side. I'm going to hold down shift and move this, and it moves my camera with it so I can see where it's going. And the next thing I need to do is add a camera into the scene by clicking my content browser, actor classes, camera actor, drag that into the scene, and using the old look through the lens tool again, I'll just move that to here. Right, I've clicked off the camera, we've got a camera there, and I think we're pretty much good to go apart from that. So what I'll do is I'll select the camera there and double click on my Matinee again, and this time I'll right click and add a new camera group. You can add an empty group, but it's just much easier to add a new camera group because it comes in with the functionality already in there. So I'm just going to call this new group camera 01 and press OK. I'm going to scroll along and just zoom out a bit just so I can see my full timeline. And what I'll do is on the movement track, I'll scroll along again to 2 seconds, press enter, so we're again adjusting key movement 1 on the movement track of the camera. I'm also going to press this little camera icon here, and what that does is that allows me to see through the lens of the camera. And what I'll do is I'll just move around my scene, navigating, and I'll go somewhere like that, and that gets a nice view of the trigger and the door opening. So if I turn off this, I'll just click somewhere to stop editing that key. If I press stop and play, there we go. We've got a nice little camera movement in there showing where the player pressed the trigger to the door opening, and we'll shut that down and see what that looks like in the game. So we'll right click play from here. Oh, one thing, it's definitely not going to work. If I press this trigger, nothing will happen. The door will open, the camera won't play because I made the mistake of not adding a director group. So that's one thing that people shouldn't forget when creating cameras. It's a mistake that I've done a few times, but if you're ever scratching your head wondering why this camera isn't playing, it's because you've not got a director track in there. So you can just left click in this box. You don't have to have any axis selected, and we'll just add a new director group here. And what the director group is it's like the director of a movie. This track is saying, you know, what camera should I be looking at? Where should I be looking? Say you have 4 or 5 different cameras in your scene. You can tell the director, cut to camera 1, cut to camera 3, cut to camera 2, etc. You know, just so he's controlling the overall track. So I'll just scroll my time bar to 00 with my director group selected. I'll just hit enter or add new key, and it says cut to group, and I want to cut to camera group 01. Okay, and just press OK, and then I'll just have a camera color all the way along. And if we click this little camera icon there, press stop, there we go. And now when we press the trigger inside the game, this director group will say, alright, we'll look through camera 1. And so if your scene isn't working, that'll be probably the main cause of it. So we'll just come out of here and just right click, play from here. And then there we go, we got our camera in there, we got our trigger, and everything's working fine. The one thing I would say is this setup may not be optimal for this kind of gameplay, because if we press that, then the camera will scroll, and then we press it again and the camera goes again. So I mean, maybe you won't want a switch animation there, and instead you may just want, I'm just holding Alt to break the links, you may just want the used there. Or if you did want the camera to play on the first time, maybe you could create a separate matinee and just play both matinees at the same time, and so that would work out much better. So that's it for covering doors, and thanks for watching.